Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special episode of Edge of the Masquerade, featuring our lovely Vincent and Cypher. We're just gonna go ahead and let them take over from here. So, without further ado, welcome.
Hello.
Alright, so let me just transition this and set the scene for you guys. So, Cypher, you got a letter from Vincent inviting you to his apartment within the Ivory Tower. And whether or not you accept is up to you.
I
Go ahead.
will accept it. Terrified, but
Alrighty, so you head to the Ivory Tower and you follow the directions in the letter down the labyrinthine maze of hallways until you finally arrive at the elevator that is off by itself. You then take the elevator up, and it's a quicker ride. It seems as though the elevator itself is in a little bit of a hurry. And before long, you are let out in front of Vincent's office.
I will approach the door and knock.
You hear a voice coming from behind the doors saying, "Please come in."
I will open the door and slowly come in. Hello, Vincent.
So Vincent is seen by you standing up in front of his desk, holding his hands behind his back. And you can notice that he's dressed differently than when you met last time. He's dressed in very modest clothes. Black trousers and, let's say, dark gray shirt with no tie. There's no jewelry, no makeup, nothing like that. You may notice that he's way less intimidating than he was last time you met him. More on your level, you could say. He walks a few steps towards you and nods politely in a gentle bow. "I'm happy to see you in full health, Miss Maloy," he says. "Was Martin Schiller of any help yesterday?"
Definitely, yeah. We might have had a little bit of a mishap, but it went over rather smoothly.
"A mishap," he says, grinning a bit.
It turns out Jeremy has slightly sticky fingers, perhaps, and that might cause a problem for Martin.
Well, it's not like he doesn't have to deal with many problems on a daily basis. You know, working for vampires, you usually end up having a lot of troubles, smaller and bigger caliber, I should say. So, don't worry about it, but I think I am more interested than in the particular ways than you did it in how your investigation went so far.
So far, it's gone rather well. We've found that there might be some connections to a security force working at the ACU.
Interesting. Well, can I count on you to keep me updated on that?
Definitely. That is not a problem.
Vincent nods happily with a smile on his face and turns around from you and says, "Now please come with me. I'd like to show you something." And then he walks, leading you to the nicely ornamented, sturdy hardwood doors that are on the side wall of his office. You can notice that there's a combination lock on the doorknob, and Vincent operates it with some sort of unnatural speed, doing something quickly to unlock them. And as the doors open, Vincent steps aside and lets Cypher go through them first.
Nervously, I watch what he's doing, and I will go through the doors.
So as you step in, you can see that this place has a very different vibe than the office. It's quite obviously a private apartment kept in a modern Victorian style. It's very dark, but quite cozy with big carpets and pillows and cushions, and there's even an electric fireplace which is on, making it look very warm and homey. But the chandeliers and some dark accents here and there still keep it a bit edgy. It's not too like IKEA house, you know. You can notice an ornamented skull on one of the shelves. There are weird sculptures depicting twisted human anatomy here and there. And there are a bit unsettling yet beautiful paintings on the walls. But in general, it's less of a mud count layer and more of a nice place to sit down and read a book surrounded by nice things. I mean, at least if you have a peculiar taste of art. Vincent smiles and turns to you, saying, "Welcome to my home. Would you like a drink? I have a wide supply."
Sure. This is actually very nice.
So, Vincent, after, of course, approaching to his bar and the little cupboard he has over his electric chimney, he opens the fireplace. He opens it and he takes a bottle from it. He actually uses quite a lot of bottles recently, but he takes one more bottle without a label of any sorts. And he takes a single glass and he pours a liquid into that bottle. The liquids, you can notice it's very dark and thick, resembling blood, and it smells very delicious. He hands you the glass.
Cautiously, I will sip this. Would this bother me since I don't have iron gullet?
No, you're fine.
What is this, Vincent?
That's human blood. And don't worry, it wasn't taken without the consent. Actually, it was donated. He says that smiling a bit. It was donated, of course, not for our use, you could say. But let's just say that no one will mind if you all take a sip from this bottle.
Blood bank, I assume?
Well, it's a little bit better than that. You might have heard, I guess there is no reason for me to keep this from you, that Lenz Foundation is supporting St. Mary's Hospital financially quite a bit in recent days.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Well, it's, how could you say, useful. I get something back from that, my guests get something back from that, and Alabaster's city citizens get the new equipment for the hospitals that save lives every day. I don't take lives, you see. I just take what I need to survive while we're trying to somehow to live in some sort of symbiosis in the city.
I suppose that makes you a good person. May I ask you a question about something?
A good person. No one is good in here, Cypher, but sure, please ask.
How much do you know about Project Synthetic?
That's funny, because I was actually going to ask you the same question. I don't know much yet, although I managed to get a very incomplete files on the project. As you may probably assume, this is a project which really interests me a lot.
It is pretty interesting.
Why are you asking?
I'm just curious about it. I know a little bit about it, and I was curious if you knew more. I had some suspicions about the true intention of this project.
Well, Cypher, excuse me, can I call you Cypher instead of Miss Maloy?
Oh, yes, of course.
Alright, Cypher, excuse me for my curiosity, but it does seem to be quite interesting that seemingly unknown person with some past in the research, which is untrackable for me, asked me about this particular project, which is kept very much secret.
I mean, it was in the news.
But how would you know what this project is about?
Before I was turned, I was working on this project. I feel like I can tell you. I hope you don't tell anyone else.
Don't worry, I do want your discretion after this meeting, and I can promise you mine. So, is there anything else that you want to share about this project?
I don't think it's what it's for. And I think because I knew when I was a human, I think that's why I was turned.
Interesting theory. We will talk about your turning a little bit more later, but there's something that I still want to show you if you would like to step a little bit deeper into my abode.
Yes, of course.
And he says that by walking through the next doors. Like the first room that you were in was more like you could say a living room or a guest room, a place that you would greet the guests at the first invites to the apartment. And he steps through the second doors, which leads to a darker place. And it's a place that you could see Cypher would feel right at home. It's a place filled with very tall bookcases. It's a private library, and the old school wooden bookcases are filled with neatly organized tomes from top to bottom. Upon a quick glance, you can more or less recognize the sections. The main one, filled with most books, is dedicated to fiction. So it's something that might not interest you personally that much, but it's a fiction especially from the Romantic era. There's Schiller, Goethe, Lord Byron, the Free Bards of Poland, a huge collection of Emily Dickinson's works, some stuff that you might have read in the past, some that you might remember from school. Then there's a scientific section, but it's mostly covered in very outdated tomes, some even medieval, long-forgotten theories and projects, Da Vinci sketches and sorts. Basically a very vast collection of scientific history. Nothing new, nothing that can help you cure cancer nowadays, but if you're into digging up and reusing some old ideas or researching on how things were done, it's for sure fascinating. And last but not least, the most interesting and the smallest section, with a lot of unnamed books, old dusty manuscripts and books that give you the sense of something connected to occult maybe, something forbidden. You can notice some titles inscribed on the sides, like Encyclopedia Vampirica or Thaumaturgical Creatures. There's also the bottom shelf, of course, with books like Computers for Grandma or Gordon Ramsay's Best Steaks, but I don't think that will be interesting for you. But Vincent leads you there and sits comfortably in the middle of the room on the red reading couch, very spacious one. And he says, "Feel free to explore my humble collection and borrow whatever you like."
When I walk into the room, my eyes widen and I stare at the vast amount of books. I haven't seen this many books in quite some time. With this comment, she slowly approaches just to the far left of the room to start combing from left to right through the room to look for books that interest her. What would be the best book for me to learn more about my affliction?
Your affliction? It's an interesting question. Well, unfortunately, I do not own many manuscripts concerning thin bloods, so your condition, as you might know already. But I would like to share with you that I did study your condition for the past century, and I gained what I believe to be extensive knowledge in the subject. I'm willing to share this knowledge with you, and I do not require anything in exchange, because I believe I owe you this.
I would like that.
Well, first of all, I want to ask you something. How is your unlife treating you so far?
It's not bad. It's definitely weird to adjust to. I suppose I was a night owl before this, but now I really am.
Well, I can't help but feel bad for all three of you, to feel somewhat guilty for the situation you've been put in. You see, this is not how it's supposed to work. I wasn't able to explain this fully last time we've met because we didn't have much time, but I guess I owe you this right now. A relationship in between sire and child, a vampire and the person he or she embraces, it's quite crucial. Sire is supposed to take care of the child. He's supposed to teach them, be an example to follow. It's not a simple task, so a decision to embrace someone shouldn't be a light one. Each time I've done it personally, it took me a lot of time to make my decision, and then I wouldn't leave the side of my child like an annoying parent I was. Your sire, well, it's not exactly a very good example to follow.
Well then. So I'm kind of lost then, like a lost child, just kind of wandering.
A little bit, yes. Is there anything about siring and embrace that you would like to know in particular?
What exactly entails when you're embraced?
Well, first of all the blood of a human must be drained dry, and then it has to be replaced with the blood of a donor, the vampire. And if the donor, the vampire, is not strong enough, you could say, that's what breeds your particular condition.
So why would someone risk... I mean, I can see that we're not really liked, perhaps would be the word. So why would someone do that? It's almost like cursing someone. Someone they don't know.
That's a very good question, and a very good way to ask this. Why? That's something I'm asking myself every time I see you and I see any of your sorts. See, first of all, do you still feel human, Cypher? Or is there something else taking over?
Yeah, I don't know anymore. I mean, everything's been so flipped around with all of this, I don't feel like anything anymore. All I know is I need to eat blood and I need to sleep during the day, and I mean, that's it. And when you mention your kind, others like you, are there more thin bloods than just us in this?
Yes, absolutely. There are a lot of them in the modern days. Actually, I do believe the first time the thin bloods emerged in the society of vampires was probably during the world wars of the last century. I wouldn't exactly pinpoint you the exact moments because no one really knows who was the first thin blood, but when so many people died, when so many mortals lost their lives without a reason, without anything to justify such a massacre, such a genocide, some of us had a weaker heart and started embracing just to save those who were close to them, just to save those who could still be saved. And that was the only way to do that. And during the 20th century, the epidemic of thin bloods, as Camarilla would call it, caused people to believe that you are the sign of the end of the world, the incoming Gehenna from vampires. And that's why most superstitious of us really wanted to get rid of you. That's not the only reason, though.
It sounds, I mean, this is coming from a human aspect, but it's almost selfish to turn someone into a thin blood then. I mean, it's awful to die, but is this better? To throw your humanity completely out the window and to turn into something else.
I agree that it's selfish. I agree that it's a bad decision, and I agree that I do not understand what would be the reasons to embrace someone like you. Unless, of course, you would be embraced by someone of a greater power, because I do certainly see the potential in that. And he says that while piercing you with his eyes, try not to be too intimidating, but also meaning that as sort of a compliment.
When he pierces her, she shudders. Well, thank you for answering my questions, and thank you for letting us continue to thrive after.
You're still not thriving, Cypher. But don't worry about that. I will try my best to help you. See, do you have any question?
You didn't decapitate me, so I appreciate that part.
Well, that's the least I could do. But see, the main problem with Finnbloods, and I believe the main reason why Camarilla usually has a big problem with your sword, is that undecisiveness, basically the lack of decision on part of a lot of Finnbloods, whether to stick with their human side or the vampire one. That's why I asked you the question before. You're very often left without a sire, left to your own conclusions, to some hearsay, superstitions spread around. There are some people out there who want to get rich or play sick jokes on your kind. A Finnblood convinced that a full blood transfusion would change him back into mortal. A Finnblood convinced that staking a head vampire with a holy wood would do the same. Finnbloods planning on grouping up and killing their own sires to regain their humanity. These are not legends, Cypher. People actually do that. And excuse me for saying that. I don't assume that you would, but I don't want you or your friends running around with a stake searching for a unicorn blood to revert your condition.
I don't think we would do that, no. But I can see your point. I can see how confused people are when they first turn. I mean, I had to teach the boys how to eat, and oh man, that was very fun, very interesting. Went really well.
How did it go?
He's
smiling.
I misjudged my strength and terrified Tommy. Jeremy did okay, but turns out he has no fangs, so that's a thing.
Oh yeah, I heard about this condition.
Do you mind if I tell the guys about what you've told me about Thin Bloods?
No, absolutely, I don't mind at all. Please do share the knowledge, at least about that, with them. There are some topics that we will talk about in here that I would rather you to keep to yourself, but as for the general knowledge about vampires, about any books that you will borrow from me, please feel free to share them with them. Oh, but there's one thing. I do believe, at least my informants told me, that you are right now spending your days and making your main base of operation from a warehouse, isn't that?
Yes, that is correct.
A warehouse, I should add, with cracks in the walls where sun pierces the building through. Isn't that true?
No, I've mostly fixed most of that. When the boys, when you took Tommy out, when Haley did, I spent the night working on the warehouse, trying to make it safer for them, because I know they know to not go in the sun, but I don't want them to accidentally walk into it.
Oh, I feel so sorry for you to do all this unnecessary work. You could have just told me, but don't worry about it now. I just wanted to tell you that I wouldn't let you take any of these quite expensive tomes that I stored in here back to that place in the warehouse. Instead, that's the least I could do. He says that by walking towards the little desk that he has in the library and opening the drawer, he takes envelope from that desk and little keys on a keychain, and he comes to Cypher and hands them over. Well, these are the keys to a small studio apartment in Alabaster downtown. You can use that as for now, probably forever really. I have no use of that particular apartment.
Wait, really? You're going to give us an apartment?
Oh, no, I'm not going to give you all an apartment. I'm giving you personally an apartment. That's yours. It's written on your name in your new fake ID, which actually I'm very sorry for their quality. I have no idea who prepared them. But yeah, just it's yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll let the guys know. Would it be alright if we ended up just moving in there entirely, if that's what they'd want to do?
Oh, I'm not sure if you will be comfortable there, all three of you. There's just one bed, but if they don't mind sleeping on the floor.
I mean,
Sure.
Jeremy sleeps in a fridge. Tommy sleeps on the floor.
Vincent just shakes his head and just chuckles, and yeah, you do whatever you want with it. It's your apartment now.
Thank you so much. I don't really have the words to express this. Things have been so rough. Thank you.
Don't worry about it. And he stands up, he walks towards his bookcase, and he just takes few of the books that are in the bookcase, checking what's inside, just making sure what parts of them would be interesting to Cypher, and gives Cypher a bit of time to examine the books herself.
She strolls through the books. A book with the word alchemy interests her. What is this?
Oh, the blood magic. Well, that's certainly a very interesting subject. If you want to borrow them, please feel free to do so. I will want them back, though.
May I borrow this one in particular? I think perhaps I have an interest in this, and Jeremy might as well.
Sure. Oh, speaking of which, I wanted to ask you, since the moments of your embrace, did you feel any changes in you in particular?
Oh, definitely. I mean, everything changes when you're... One minute I was researching, and the next minute I was trying to eat people, so it's a little bit of a shift.
Vincent smiles, taking the Encyclopedia Vampirica from the bookshelf and just taking it into his hands and checking a few of the pages inside. Well, I meant something a little bit more specific, let's say. I would like to borrow you this particular book. This is pretty much the most extensive knowledge in the pill when it comes to vampire lore and our history and who we really are and what kind of groups are we divided through. I know that you as a thin blood per se, you may not yet feel the full, let's say, how to call it, potential of your blood, but it is for sure within you. See, we vampires, we are separated into clans, or you could say just bloodlines, basically groups of vampires differing much in between each other. Each group has a very particular abilities, particular curses that are really annoying for us throughout the eternity, and these differences are really the base of our history, our modern conflicts, and the politics behind it. It's something that you should know.
I'll definitely read it. It seems interesting, and I don't have much to do beyond your task that you set on us.
Oh, there will be way much to do as the nights go through. It's always like that. When I became a prince, I was quite sure that I just have very few tasks to cover, and then I will be able to take a quick time off and spend some time with Haley, but unfortunately, it's not as easy as it seems. Anyway, I want to share with you a little tidbits of our lore. One thing being that the clan that I am from, the clan Toreador, we have this particular affliction that you may not know of. We are, you see, very much susceptible to beauty, which is, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people do believe that it's a very superficial thing. A beauty of faces, a beauty of clothes, a beauty of very basic things like these. But I personally do see a lot of beauty in research, you see. When I go through the books, when I go through these things that you can see here in the bookcase, and I flip the page after page, there's some sort of passion that is raging deep within my soul, just to know what is on the next page, what knowledge will it bring me. I really want to know more and more, and it drives me crazy sometimes to know that I don't have maybe enough time, even if I have eternity, to learn it all. Have you ever felt anything like this, especially after your embrace?
Especially as a human, I've always strived to know as much as I can. Perhaps that's why I've always thrown myself into my studies. Now it's even worse because there's so much I don't know about being a vampire. So there's endless amounts of knowledge that I haven't even started, so it kind of drives me mad.
Well, it might get even worse for you, Cypher. He says that, smiling and turning towards her, handing her the book, Encyclopedia Vampirica, that he gently touches the cover off and just gives it straight to Cypher's hands. And that's because I do sense some Toreador blood flowing within you.
Oh. I suppose that's a good thing. I don't know what the other clans are like, but an affliction of beauty seems better than anything else. But would that mean that if you saw something totally hideous, like, oh, what's the movie? It's so old. It's from, like, the 1900s, with Nosferatus. Do they make you sick?
Oh, so old. Well, your comment right now just made me sick a bit. He says, smiling. You may not know exactly how old Vincent is, but you can assume that he's way older than that movie. Well, I do consider that movie one of the works of art, so I do not exactly know what you talk about. But yes, when you find yourself surrounded by non-very beautiful places or people, you could say that Toreadors lose a bit of their power in such surroundings. We thrive the best in places that we personally consider beautiful, and it doesn't have to be a beautiful interior filled with expensive furniture or anything like that. It can be as well a library filled with books that you consider very beautiful.
I only ask as that is a classic. I mean, that is a very old example for humans, and it is back in the time when it was released and popular. I mean, it was terrifying and monstrous, and I'm sure it's different for you. I don't know if they exist, but you know.
What should I tell you, Cypher? They do exist, in fact. It's kind of funny how I could have said right now that there's a lot of works of arts that were made in the past century that were quite inspired by the reality of the vampire world. See, vampires are everywhere. They are in Hollywood, they are in media, they are behind the books that you've probably read. And the movie Nosferatu, I bet it was actually a sick joke done by some Toreador on the poor Nosferatu folks that are indeed one of their clans that is a part of Camarilla. I'm sure that you will meet some of them in the nights that are to follow, because Nosferatu activity in Alabaster City is quite a noticed one.
Would that imply that the pictures on your wall in your main entrance of your apartment were those other vampires?
Not all of them, but some. And not all of these books are, but some are for sure. So that's just becoming extremely invested in his thoughts, just like he drifted away somewhere looking at the fiction section of his bookcases.
Are you alright, Vincent?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. See, that's what I told you. This is a curse, the affliction to beauty that we have. It's not entirely positive, as you said, but it's not something that you have to worry about right now, as it doesn't display fully in your blood. It does display in the blood of stronger vampires, and I guess there's something that I need to talk to you about in more detail concerning the Thin Bloods. And he says that by walking towards the couch back there, sitting down, and gesturing towards Cypher, showing a place next to him if she wants to sit down.
I will follow him and slowly approach. When I sit down, I run my hands down my legs as if to brush dust off, trying to sit as proper but as comfortable as I can.
So I do assume that except for your two friends, you haven't met any other Thin-Bloods, nor haven't you heard anything about your particular condition.
No, I haven't. I mean, I would assume that most Thin-Bloods probably wouldn't out themselves, but I've never met another.
See, maybe that's good then that I will be the first one to tell you about this. He says that by just focusing on some points in the deep corner of his room, pondering about something very quickly, and then faces back to her and says, so I guess that you haven't heard about the ways to, let's say, cure your condition.
No, I haven't. Is there a way to go back to being human?
Well, that's one of the hearsays that you might hear on the streets. See, a lot of Thin-Bloods do believe that there is a way to go back to mortality, and there are a lot of ways that people made you believe, that other vampires usually made you believe for any sort of a gain or just as a sick joke. As I told you, blood transfusions, killing the head vampire, staking someone. Whatever ideas you may have about that, there's something that the mortal science has wrong. See, mortal science has a lot of troubles with things paranormal, with things so-called paranormal, of course, so-called supernatural, because they always try to find very real proofs for things like that, find viruses in our blood, or find anything like this that would prove that vampires are actually a product of science, product of something that can be easily researchable, instead of, as we call it, the curse of Cain. That's what most vampires do believe, and most vampire scholars believe that vampirism is actually a curse. And I don't think that curses can be easily treated, Cypher.
Cain is biblical. I mean, I've heard of it before. So, what does that have relation to human religion? Did vampires create that too?
Well, you might be surprised by that, Cypher, but I do know of very reputable vampiric scholars that do say that they've met Cain in person. And Cain, in fact, is said to be the original vampire, someone who started it all. Some believe that, some don't. I personally don't have a single idea what to think about it, but all I know is that going back to humanity from vampirism is not as simple as some people might tell you that it is. And I wouldn't really hang on to that idea.
I definitely would rather not. As a human, I was a cradle-born Catholic, and Cain definitely wasn't a shining example of a good person or decent person. I know vampires aren't good people, but I hope to think that they would not do the things that Cain has done. According to the Bible, of course, I don't know what he actually has done.
Well, there's a book that says more in detail about the actual works of Cain, the book called Book of Nod, which I do not have myself. I think if I had this, my Camarilla reference would actually shun me out of this town and tell me never to come back. If you ever lay your hands on that book, Cypher, please do give it a read. It will give you a little bit better idea on who Cain really was. But don't worry about Cain right now. It's not like we will meet him for a coffee or anything like that. I want you to worry more about something else. See, it is still very much possible to be human, very much human, while still being a vampire. See, I personally believe that I am more human. I feel more human right now than I ever felt during my mortal life. And unfortunately, to achieve that kind of a status, that kind of a feeling, that setting of a mind, you must gain powers as a vampire. Finnbloods drift somewhere in between. But there's still a way for you to become a full-fledged vampire.
How would I do that?
Well, it's something that, let's say, is not exactly approved by our society for obvious reasons. And it's not something that a prince would usually tell a Finnblood. But let's say I'm a very modern prince, and also I do respect you personally, and because of that an hour, he winks a bit by just piercing you with his eyes again. Personal connection. I would tell you about this, of course, if you want to.
Yes, I suppose I don't know if I want to do it, but knowledge is wonderful, so perhaps I want to know.
Of course, you may not want to do this, but again, just for the sake of knowledge. He says that by grinning. We call it, it's a very, very ugly word, but we call it a diablerie. It sounds like something super evil, isn't it? It's like, it's way worse than merely killing a human, which vampires never really pay a big attention to, right? Did you ever kill a human, Cypher?
As a human or as a vampire? Because as a vampire, I've, you know.
Well, doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, I guess suppose. Yeah, I guess not.
See, that's what I'm always laughing at. Camarilla do believes that killing a vampire is way bigger of a sin than killing a mortal. But what exactly is the difference? Do we feel different? Are we? Of course we are different when it comes to our powers or abilities, but you could say that vampires are nothing but leeches on mortals. You know, a parasite that dwells the human society, while humans are the ones that should be considered better and bigger than us by a morality standards. Don't you think so?
No, I don't. Humans aren't good people. Humans are bad. I mean, look at done the genocides. I mean, there was a Holocaust. We're no better than you, or what I was no better than I am now. To relate to vampires eating humans, I mean, even then, humans, we mass produce animals to eat them. We destroy the earth to feed ourselves, and we think nothing of it. I mean, one day humans will wipe themselves out. We don't need any help.
Well, you'll be surprised how many of these terrible occurrences in the history were actually steered by vampires from the back just to, you know, change the politics a little bit, shake the world. It's the easiest to gain power during the times of war. It's the easiest to change the offices, change the occupation of seats here and there during the times of war. And we vampires, we do use that a lot. You might be right though. It's not certainly true that vampires are anything less than humans. Of course, by the powers and by the abilities, we are everything but more. But I do believe that we both have our sins, and killing a vampire could be quite comparable to killing a human. Wouldn't you think so?
Definitely.
So, coming back to the main topic, diablerie, my dear Cypher, is when a vampire drinks the vitae of another vampire and drinks that vampire dry. When you do that, you gain that vampire's powers and you absorb them within yourself. Of course, if you can handle the powers that you are gaining, rendering a Finnblood who drains a full-fledged vampire this way, a full-fledged vampire, in fact.
But you'd have to kill that vampire.
Yes, indeed. It is sometimes you might be actually surprised by that, it's sometimes done with the full consent of the vampire who is being drugged. There are some clans, there are some organizations within our society, a pretty niche ones nowadays, that do that out of the full consent of both parties. But in general, yes, you have to kill another vampire.
It's almost like suicide then. Because you can't really... Yeah.
Well, treat it however you want. I'm sharing this for the sake of your knowledge. That's the only way for a Finnblood to heal their conditions. It's diablerizing another vampire, drinking another vampire dry. Whatever you will do with that knowledge, it's up to you. Naturally, Camarilla forbids diablery. Normally, in normal occasions. But there are some occasions in which even Camarilla allows them to happen. For example, when the blood hunt is organized. So when a certain vampire within our ranks breaks a lot of laws, causes a lot of mischief, causes a lot of chaos, then we do organize a blood hunt, which is basically death warrant on the person who committed all these crimes. We basically have a death sentence for them. And in such cases, Finnbloods, or usually other vampires, it is very rarely Finnbloods, or whoever is actually responsible for capturing said vampire, can absorb their Vitae. That's all I can tell you right now.
Very interesting. Thank you for this knowledge.
No problem. You may be wondering why I'm sharing all that with you, aren't you?
I'm hoping that it's for a good reason.
Well, Cypher, I don't know how to tell you this. And he says that by standing up and just walking towards the bookcases and again just studying all the books with the empty gaze from top to bottom. It hurts me so much to see the potential that is in your blood being locked deep within you right now because of your condition.
I suppose that's fair. I don't know. I obviously can't see my potential, so I don't know what you mean by this.
Your blood is very special, Cypher. It does have a plenty of potential within it, and so believe me, I know the most about it. He says that by turning back to Cypher, smiling a bit, but also with a little bit of a sadness in his eyes. Cypher, I want you to know that my blood is within your veins right now.
What? What do you mean?
I know, it's a shock. It was a shock for me as well. You were created without my consent and your own consent by my own child. It is my child who embraced you, and I was so mad when I heard. It's something that I would never, ever allow to happen. But here we are.
I don't... Why?
That's the same question I'm asking myself since the time I've seen you for the first time.
Who is your
I know
child?
that you have... I think you can guess already, can't you?
Haley?
Vincent just nods his head.
At least it's not the platinum-haired kid.
Oh no. He wouldn't do that, believe me. Cypher, my child, Haley Johnson, embraced you that night for a reason unknown to me. And it is still unknown to me up until now, and you may think these people are in love, these people are in a relationship, these people should know each other's secrets, right? But more often than not, love is blind, Cypher.
She
And
laughs at that comment about lovers should know the secrets.
do you know something more about that particular thing?
As a human, I did some awful things, I suppose. Not awful for myself, but awful for others.
Then you might understand her better than I do. Because I'm not sure what awful things she's doing behind the scenes, but I'm quite sure there are plenty of them.
I feel like she's devoted to you. I have only met her a few times, but she seems to have devotion to you.
Vincent quickly, with an unnatural speed, approaches Cypher in a little bit of a terrifying fashion. Looks her straight in the eyes, fully serious. Like, his face is just rock serious. He pierces her with her eyes again and says, Cypher, do not trust Haley. She has way more manipulation powers than I would ever have. She scares me sometimes, even me. So I would like to ask you not to succumb to her ways. And be aware of that.
Yeah, that's not a problem. When he approached me, I shuddered and kind of drew back. It was a little terrifying. I was not prepared for that.
Vincent composes himself, just fixing his shirt, and I'm sorry, as you might probably guess, I'm pretty sensitive about this subject.
Understandable. Yeah, yeah. I suppose it's really difficult when someone you love is perhaps not the person you thought they were.
At the mention of the word love, there's the sound of keys jingling in the next room. Vincent, I'm home! Haley's voice echoes throughout the entire apartment.
This is awkward. I'm alone in your private area with you. I'm gay, by the way. I might have had a boyfriend, but it was a cover. I'm gay as hell.
Vincent chuckles, hearing, and relaxes visibly at Cypher's words, and just whispers very quickly, don't worry about that. But remember, be cautious of her.
Vincent, are you home?
Come on in.
Haley makes her way to... You can hear her high heels clacking against the floor as she opens the door to the library, and she kind of stops for a moment and looks at Cypher and then looks at Vincent and is everything okay?
Oh, Haley, it's so nice to see you, says Vincent, approaching her, opening his arms and hugging her in a very quick embrace. I just invited Cypher here to have a little conversation about, you know, things that I haven't covered before. The basic stuff. Vampire etiquette, clans, Camarilla, Sabbat, and the other boring stuff that you as well know as for now.
Yeah, you kind of forget to do some of the more important things of your job, but I'm glad that you took the time to stop and talk to Haley. Have you talked to the others as well?
You mean to Cypher?
Cypher, correct.
Not yet, no, but I do plan to have private meetings with them as well. He turns his head towards Cypher and gives her a little wink. Why are you here, Haley?
We were gonna go out on the town tonight. It's our anniversary, did you forget?
Oh. Should I go?
No, it's fine. I can come back later. Sorry for interrupting. Haley kind of slips out of Vincent's embrace and quickly leaves through the front door.
Maybe you should stop that. Anniversaries are pretty important. I fucked up really bad a few times, and you don't want to do what I did.
What do you think is a big fuck up? He tells to Cypher, very quietly, making sure that Haley doesn't hear that.
Forgetting about an anniversary.
Forgetting an anniversary or creating a Finbot like you.
I suppose you're right. But taking your grudges, your anger out on somebody, I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well separate. I'm not telling you what to do. Obviously, she stutters and is a little nervous, but, you know, you love her.
Vincent turns towards Cypher with a really warm smile on his face, and he just smiles in a way that really makes Cypher feel all relaxed and just chill, and like everything is going to be good, everything is going to be perfect kind of a way. And he says, Cypher, I'm so sorry of what happened to you. I'm so sorry that it was you in particular that has to endure it all just because of my unsubordinate child, and I know I am a pretty horrible father figure and a pretty horrible person too. But if you ever need any help from me, if you ever are in any kind of a trouble, please let me know. And saying that, he just approaches her and he puts his hands on her arm, just patting her very delicately and not at all sexually, just very very daddy and daughter type of a like way.
Daddy. I will definitely let you know.
I will follow your advice then. Oh, and you, if you want to, you can stay a bit here and just chill in my apartment, check out all the books. If I come back with Haley, I would for sure need to ask you out, but as for now, feel free to stay here and check whatever you like. And saying that, Vincent winks to her yet again and uses his celerity and quickly storms through the door, trying to catch up with Haley.
I will sit and just read the book that he has loaned me.
Haley's heckin' gone.
He asks the officer Chunk downstairs, Chunk, have you seen Haley Johnson going through here?
Yeah, she came in and then she left really quickly. She already gone, sir. I apologize. Did you want me to keep her? I can go find her.
That will be okay. Just do your usual job. I don't think Miss Haley is needed tonight. He says that and walks back to his apartment, just in a slow, natural pace.
Before you leave, he gives you a wink like, good luck tonight, sir.
Vincent looks at him with this very annoyed, disappointed kind of a gaze. And he presses the elevator button. He goes back upstairs. And he walks through the doors to his library, just seeing Cypher, already all relaxed, reading his books and saying, well, the date's over, I guess.
The date?
I mean, my date. The anniversary date. It's over.
Well.
But still, don't feel uncomfortable because of that. I did what I could, based on your advice. Do you mind another drink?
Sure, yes.
Cypher, you get a call on your phone. When you look down, you see Martin Schiller.
Oh man, this is not gonna be good. I answer my phone. Hey Martin, how's it going?
Cypher.
Before? Okay, that was Jeremy. I am so sorry I tried, but you know how people are. It's in our warehouse, you can go get it.
You didn't try to get in it 3 times and wipe everything, did you?
See, okay, Jeremy... I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, I'm just telling you what happened. It's definitely my fault for not just, like, tying him up or something. He definitely tried to get in it. And then I was swayed to do this. I got in it, but because there's no network, it kind of just deleted everything. Sorry.
Vincent just like lifts his eyes from the book and chuckles into it.
Okay. I will... Okay, he just hangs up after that.
That went well. I put my phone back into my pocket and returned to my book.
Was that Martin Schiller?
You would be correct in your assumption. And he knows what has happened.
Wait, what exactly has happened, Cypher?
You see, when we went to go get the files, Jeremy, great guy, I love this guy, he's fantastic, but he tried to help, and in the process of helping, he took a computer, really big one, and, I mean, we took some other stuff. We took a file on a baseball player, but that's stuff that we really needed, but the computer, debatable. When we tried to get in it, I did manage to get in, but without the network, it kind of shit the bed. Kind of deleted everything.
Oh, I see. Well, I might make you feel a little bit more comfortable by telling you that I made way more more difficult evenings happen to Mr. Schiller before, so it's not the worst that could happen to him. I promise you.
Well, that makes me feel better. Kinda. I mean, I can't see him punching you in the face. Be kind of a bad decision, but me being a thin blood,
Vincent just like suddenly shifts his head from the book and watches Cypher for a second after she said the words thin blood, and he pierces her through again, just pondering about something super intensely, and then he says, Cypher, as my anniversary date didn't go well tonight, I have a question. Do you still have some time tonight?
I have all the time in the world.
I wanted to show you something. See, I am not very sure yet of your full abilities per se, but I might show you something that will help you during these nights and investigations and so forth. Would you like to follow me outside?
Yes.
All right, so Vincent puts on the coat and he leads her outside to the elevator and down the ivory tower to Officer Chunk. And he says, Officer, would you please inform my driver that he'll be needed?
Oh yeah, sir, I can totally get right on that. And he hits a button on the desk. After about 5-10 minutes, a nondescript, small, not limousine car arrives at the front of the ivory tower.
Vincent leads Cypher out of the doors and opens the doors to the limousine for her so she can walk in first and then sits after her.
Oh, thank you.
My pleasure. He then lifts himself a bit towards the driver and he says, some very dark and unpleasant neighborhood, please.
Those words made Cypher a tad bit nervous.
Yeah, sir, I can do that for you. And you guys drive about 10 minutes south to the edge of Alabaster South.
What are we doing, Vincent?
You'll see in a second. Vincent just looks outside, tells the driver to drive carefully, slowly throughout the area. He's not afraid because the car is obviously bulletproof. And he looks outside, trying to find some very vulnerable, potentially sick and not feeling well subject. Someone who is, let's say, not in a very good shape.
You find a brown-haired woman about in her mid-20s, sitting against the side of a building. She seems to be crying.
Is she in any sort of a shape as she's like sick or ill? Because that's someone that I would in particular want to see right now.
She looks a little green, yeah.
All right, Vincent opens the window to the limousine. He just like looks outside and looks her straight in the eyes in this presence-infused, inviting, relaxing way.
She slowly stops her tears as she stands up and walks towards the limo.
Vincent walks out of the limo. He opens the doors very wide so she can sit inside in between him and Cypher. And then he enters the limousine and closes the doors behind him. After the car drives off, he faces towards the woman and says, "Hello, good evening. What is your name and what are you crying?"
I just lost my brother. It's been a really hard time, and I don't know, just out late looking for him. I think I got a cold. At least that's what the doctors say, so I came down here to see if anyone's seen him.
Oh, don't worry about anything, honey. We will find your missing brother. We'll make sure that everything will be just alright. And we will make sure to give you the medicine to make you feel a little bit better. He says that, looking at her with a lot of care in his eyes, with like just trying to make her feel the best that she can. And then he faces this Cypher and just whispers to her in a very, let's say, it's kind of like an order, but not really. Cypher might still say no. Telling her, "Feed her your own blood."
What?
Trust me. Feed her your own blood.
Do you have a knife?
You can use your own fangs, Cypher.
Right. She felt awkward as she'd kind of forgotten about that. Clamping down upon her wrist, she lets the blood flow before she offers it to the woman towards her mouth.
The woman looks a little confused and looks back over at Vincent. Vincent, I assume you give her a reassuring gesture.
Yes.
She then goes ahead and begins taking some of Cypher's blood. And more rapidly than you're used to, Cypher, you see her getting better. You know, she's not sniffling as much, her skin is clearing up a bit, and she kind of seems in ecstasy.
What is happening, Vincent? We can heal people?
Vincent doesn't reply and just looks at the woman that is in between them. He gently brushes her hair with his hands and just like makes sure that she feels so relaxed and so chilled. And then he faces Cypher and says, your blood has a big potential, Cypher. And the blood of all vampires has that potential. Not only a potential to heal people, to make them age slower, to make them healthy again, to make them a bit more powerful than they are in their mortal shells. But it also gives you power. And to that he faces to the woman in between them and says, say, what would you do for this unknown girl sitting next to you, honey?
She was lost in the ecstasy of the moment as she pulls her mouth away from Cypher's arm. I would do anything for her. And then she turns to Cypher. Is it true? Can you help me find my brother?
I can try. The way the woman spoke to her, it was terrifying. It was something that she had never experienced before.
The woman takes your hand in both of hers, and a single tear rolls down her eye. How rude of me. I didn't even introduce myself. My name's May Alfie Gunn, and I'm looking for Thomas Gunn. And that's where we'll end it.
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
What the fuck?
Holy shit!
Tommy is gonna be so mad at me.
Oh god. That was not a great idea.
Oh, it's so good!
That was so good.
It's so good!
You fuck.